If neither of them stopped writing, then who did? The question followed Elena all the way home. It sat beside her in the passenger seat, it climbed the apartment stairs with her, it remained there while she checked on Lily, and it was still waiting when she finally sat alone at the kitchen table long after midnight. For years, Elena believed her mother's past was simple. Now every answer seemed to create three new questions. The photograph, the letters, the missing pages, Rowan Sterling's reaction, none of it fit together, not anymore. She slowly removed the bundle of letters from the wooden box once again. The paper felt older than before, heavier, as though it carried the weight of 26 years. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, the apartment remained silent except for the turning of pages. One letter after another revealed the same thing: hope, plans, commitment. The future Rowan and Vivian once imagined was written between every line. There was no anger, no betrayal, no warning signs, nothing that explained how two people who clearly cared for one another could simply vanish from each other's lives. Then Elena noticed something, a date. She checked another letter, then another. Her pulse quickened. The timeline didn't make sense. Several months were missing entirely. Large sections of correspondence had disappeared, not misplaced. Removed, deliberately. Someone had gone through these letters and selected specific pages to take. Not all of them, only the ones that connected certain events, certain conversations, certain answers. Elena stared at the empty gaps. The promises they made, and then Elena, a young woman carrying the same eyes, the same determination, the same stubborn refusal to walk away from difficult questions, questions Rowan suddenly realized he wanted answered just as badly, because if Vivian never abandoned him, then who made sure he believed she had, and why? The following morning, neither Elena nor Rowan knew it yet, but before the day ended, they would uncover the first piece of a deception that had stolen 26 years from both of them. The next morning arrived with more questions than answers. Elena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same image, her mother's photograph, Rowan Sterling standing beside her, and the confusion on Rowan's face when she mentioned the letters. By sunrise, she had already read the entire collection twice. The coffee growing cold beside her had long been forgotten, because the more she read, the more impossible the story became. Nothing about it felt like a relationship. That had naturally ended. There were disagreements, there were challenges, there were moments of uncertainty, but there was never a goodbye, never a final argument, never a letter saying it was over. Just silence, a silence that stretched for decades. At exactly 9 o'clock, her phone rang. She already knew who it was. "Good morning, Miss Brooks." Daniel, Rowan's assistant. His voice remained calm and professional. "Mr. Sterling would like to continue yesterday's conversation if you're available." Elena looked down at the letters scattered across her table. "I'll be there." 2 hours later, she found herself sitting across from Rowan once again. This time, the atmosphere felt completely different. The formal distance from yesterday had disappeared. Neither of them cared about politeness anymore. Both wanted answers. Rowan studied the stack of letters Elena had brought with her. His expression hardened. "I haven't seen these in 26 years. Elena carefully slid one across the table. "You recognize it?" Rowan nodded immediately. "I wrote it." The certainty in his voice surprised her. "You remember?" A faint smile appeared. "Some things aren't easy to forget." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rowan reached into a nearby cabinet. When he returned, he carried a worn leather folder. Its edges were faded from age, its surface marked by years of handling. Elena watched as he slowly opened it. Inside were dozens of documents, old photographs, notes, copies of letters, and newspaper clippings. Her eyes widened. "You kept all of this?" Rowan looked down. "I never stopped looking." The room fell silent. Then he handed her a photograph. The image showed him and Vivian sitting beneath a large oak tree, both laughing, neither looking at the camera. The happiness felt real, unforced, the kind of happiness that couldn't be staged. Elena swallowed. Her mother had never looked like that in any picture she remembered. "What happened?" Rowan exhaled slowly. "I wish I knew." He pulled another document from the folder. A letter, one Elena had never seen before. "I sent this 2 weeks before she disappeared." Elena immediately examined it. The handwriting matched, the date matched, everything matched, except one thing, the envelope. Her eyes narrowed. Something was wrong, very wrong. The address wasn't complete. Half the street name was missing. Rowan noticed her expression. "What is it?" She handed it back. "This never would have arrived," he frowned. "What do you mean, the address is incomplete?" Rowan stared at the envelope. For several seconds, he didn't speak. Then he pulled another one from the folder, and another, each carried the same problem: missing information. Incomplete details, errors that would prevent delivery. The realization hit both of them at the same time. Someone had altered them. Rowan slowly sat back, the color draining from his face. That's impossible, but Elena already knew it wasn't, because she had discovered something similar the night before. She reached into her bag, then placed one of Vivian's letters on the table. This one was never sent either. Rowan picked it up carefully, his hands almost trembling. He unfolded the paper, and began reading. The longer he read, the quieter he became. Finally, he lowered it. "I waited for you." The word seemed to wound him. Elena felt her chest tighten, because suddenly the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Vivian had waited, Rowan had waited, both believed the other had walked away, both had spent decades carrying the same heartbreak, neither had known they were victims of the exact same lie. The room felt smaller now, heavier, as though the past itself had entered and taken a seat between them. Then Elena noticed something else, a name. Written in the corner of one of the envelopes, small, almost invisible, a signature, not Rowan's, not Vivian's, someone else's. She leaned closer. At first she thought she was imagining it. Then she saw it clearly, the initials, GB. Her heartbeat quickened, because she knew exactly who those initials belonged to: Gregory Brooks, her mother's older brother, the uncle she hadn't seen in years, the man Vivian rarely spoke about, the man who always changed the subject whenever Rowan Sterling's name appeared on television. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. Rowan looked at her. "What is it?" Elena stared at the initials, then slowly looked up. "I think we just found the first person who knew the truth." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything either of them had experienced that day, because for the first time, this wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a trail, and that trail was leading directly towards someone who had spent 26 years making sure two people never found each other again. For the rest of the afternoon, neither Elena nor Rowan spoke much, not because there was nothing left to say, because there was too much. The initials remained on the table between them, GB, two simple letters, yet somehow they felt heavier than everything that had come before. Gregory Brooks, Vivian's older brother. Elena hadn't spoken to him in nearly 7 years, even before her mother's death. Gregory had always kept his distance. Family gatherings, birthdays, holidays, he attended when necessary, left when possible, never rude, never warm, just distant. At the time, Elena assumed that was simply his personality. Now she wasn't so sure. Rowan stood beside the window overlooking the estate grounds. His jaw tightened. "How old is he now?" 62. Rowan nodded slowly, then his eyes narrowed, almost as though he had remembered something. "Vivian once told me he didn't trust me." Elena looked up. "What do you mean?" A bitter smile appeared. "He thought ambition changes people." Rowan stared out toward the gardens. "He believed success would eventually make me forget where I came from." Silence followed. Then he added quietly, "He never thought I was good enough for her." A chill ran through Elena, because suddenly the pieces were beginning to fit together, not perfectly, but enough to form a picture, a dangerous one. 3 hours later, they were driving toward a small town nearly 90 minutes outside the city. Gregory had retired years ago. According to public records, he now lived alone, a modest house. A quiet life, nothing that would ever connect him to one of the country's most powerful businessmen. Rain clouds gathered overhead as they pulled into the driveway. The house looked ordinary, almost disappointingly ordinary, yet Elena couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Neither of them moved immediately. Rowan kept both hands on the steering wheel, his expression unreadable. "What if we're wrong?" Elena looked at him. "What if we're not?" Neither had an answer. Eventually she stepped out first. The gravel crunched beneath her feet. Each step toward the front door felt heavier than the last. Then she knocked. Once, twice, a long pause followed. Finally, footsteps approached from inside. The door opened. Gregory Brooks stared back at them. For a moment nobody spoke. His eyes moved from Elena to Rowan, then back to Elena, and in that instant, something flashed across his face, not confusion, not surprise, recognition, the kind of recognition that comes from seeing a ghost you thought would never return. His shoulders stiffened, the color drained from his face, and Elena knew. Before a single word was spoken, he already understood why they were there. Uncle Gregory. Her voice sounded calmer than she felt, his eyes remained fixed on Rowan, then he sighed, a slow, defeated sigh, the kind that comes from a person who knows a secret has finally caught up with them. You should both come inside. The living room felt frozen in another decade, old furniture, old photographs, old memories. Gregory sat across from them, suddenly looking much older than his 62 years. For several moments nobody spoke, then Rowan broke the silence. Did you interfere with our letters? No anger, no shouting, just a question. Gregory closed his eyes, and that alone was enough. Elena felt her stomach drop, because innocent people usually deny things. Gregory didn't. Instead he stared at the floor, a long silence stretched across the room. Then finally he spoke, yes, the word landed like a hammer. Elena's heart sank. Rowan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react, he simply sat there, listening. Gregory leaned back heavily. As soon as I heard your company was expanding, I knew what would happen. His gaze shifted toward Rowan. You were chasing investors. Building businesses. Taking risks. His voice carried no hatred, only regret. I watched my own father destroy our family pursuing success. Rowan remained silent. Gregory continued, and I couldn't watch Vivian go through that. Elena stared at him. You hid the letters? Gregory nodded. I intercepted some of yours. Then he looked toward Rowan. And some of yours. The room fell silent again. 26 years. Destroyed by decisions made in secret. Gregory rubbed his eyes. I thought eventually you'd both move on. His voice cracked slightly. I convinced myself I was protecting her. But you lied. Elena's words came out sharper than intended. Gregory lowered his head. I know. Tears formed in the corners of his eyes. For the first time, he didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man haunted by the consequences of his own choices. I told Vivian you stopped writing. Rowan's eyes closed. Gregory swallowed. And I told you she didn't want to see you anymore. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Because there it was, the truth, simple, cruel, permanent. Two people who loved each other, separated not by betrayal, not by distance, not by fate, but by a lie repeated often enough that eventually everyone believed it, even themselves. Elena looked toward Rowan, the billionaire who had spent decades carrying a wound that never healed. His expression remained calm, yet there was something heartbreaking in his eyes. Not anger, not revenge, grief, pure grief, for the life that should have happened. Gregory's voice trembled. She found out eventually. Both Elena and Rowan looked up. What? Gregory nodded slowly. Years later, the room froze. Every muscle in Elena's body tightened, because suddenly there was another truth waiting to be uncovered. Gregory looked directly at Rowan, and what he said next changed everything. Vivian learned what I did. He paused, then added quietly, and she wrote one final letter. Years later, the room froze. Every muscle in Elena's body tightened, because suddenly there was another truth waiting to be uncovered. Gregory looked directly at Rowan, and what he said next changed everything. Vivian learned what I did. He paused, then added quietly, and she wrote one final letter. The room fell silent, even the rain outside seemed to disappear. Rowan stared at Gregory, his voice was barely above a whisper. What did she say? Gregory slowly stood and walked toward an old wooden cabinet. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then he returned holding a sealed envelope. The paper had yellowed with age, the edges were worn, but one thing remained perfectly clear, the handwriting, Vivian's. Elena felt her heart pound as Gregory carefully placed the letter on the table. I couldn't bring myself to destroy this one. Rowan stared at it. 26 years. 26 years of unanswered questions sat inside that envelope. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Then he began to read. The room remained completely silent, only the sound of turning paper broke the stillness. As Rowan's eyes moved across the page, his expression changed. Shock, sadness, relief, regret, every emotion seemed to pass through him at once. Finally, he lowered the letter. His eyes glistened. Elena had never seen him look so vulnerable. What did she say? For several seconds, Rowan couldn't answer. Then he swallowed. She found out. Gregory lowered his head. Rowan continued. She discovered the letters had been hidden. A tear rolled down Gregory's cheek, but Rowan kept reading. She wrote that she spent years believing I left her. His voice cracked. By the time she learned the truth, she thought too much time had passed. Elena felt her chest tighten. Rowan looked back at the letter. She said she wanted to contact me 100 times. Silence. She said fear stopped her. Another pause. Then Rowan smiled sadly, the kind of smile that hurts more than tears. She also wrote that she never stopped loving me. Nobody spoke. Nobody could. Because after 26 years, the answer had finally arrived. Not betrayal, not abandonment, not rejection, just two people separated by a lie neither of them knew existed. Rowan carefully folded the letter. His eyes drifted toward the old photograph on the table. For the first time since Elena met him, the questions were gone, the mystery was over, the truth had finally been found, and somehow, that truth hurt less than the lie. Morning arrived without noise, no storms, no tension, just a quiet light spilling through the glass windows of Rowan Sterling's estate. For the first time, it didn't feel like a place built to impress anyone, it just felt still. Elena stood near the window, holding Vivian's final letter close to her chest, not reading it, not searching for more answers, just holding it, like something fragile that had finally stopped breaking her life apart. Behind her, footsteps approached. Rowan. He didn't speak at first, neither of them did. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was complete. Gregory was gone, he had left before sunrise. No confrontation, no defense. Only a short note left behind. I tried to protect her the wrong way. And I lost everything anyway. Rowan placed a small envelope on the table. This is yours, he said quietly. Elena looked at it. What is it? Everything she kept. After she found out the truth. A pause, then softer. She wanted you to have it someday. Elena slowly sat down. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside were a few pages, not many, but enough. Vivian's handwriting, clear, careful, honest. Elena read in silence. Rowan turned away, giving her space. As her eyes moved across the final lines, her expression softened. There was no anger in the words, no bitterness. Only regret, and love that had nowhere left to go. When she finished, she lowered the pages gently onto the table. She never stopped loving you, Elena said quietly. Rowan closed his eyes for a moment. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I just wish time had waited for us. Elena looked at him. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a powerful man who owned half the city. She just saw someone who had been waiting for something that never came back, and someone who finally understood why. Hours passed. No more explanations were needed. No more missing pieces. The story had already told itself. Weeks later, life didn't return to what it was before. It became something gentler, something slower. Rowan no longer lived only behind glass towers and meetings that never ended. He started showing up in small moments, at Elena's home, at quiet dinners, at times when Lily laughed too loudly and refused to stop telling stories, and for the first time in decades, he didn't feel like someone chasing the past. He felt like someone allowed to stay in the present. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, all three of them stood outside the estate gardens. No secrets, no unanswered questions, no invisible walls between them anymore, just time. Rowan looked at Elena. Then at Lily, and something inside him finally settled, not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was missing anymore. Elena watched him for a moment, then looked at the fading sky. Some truths don't arrive in time to fix what was lost, but they arrive in time to stop you from losing what's left, and for the first time, that was enough.